This illustration deals with arc energy reduction and documentation in accordance with 240.87a and b, and now we're dealing with circuit breakers that have settings. Now, first of all, switchgear. This is a switchgear. And secondly, it's a non-instantaneous trip circuit breaker in 240.87. And then, of course, if we look at the third thing is the settings, we have to be knowledgeable to know how to set it. And then, of course, the final note up here, right above the switchgear, says documentation for 240.87a is required. So we have to have the documentation that it will function in a reliable and dependable manner and present that to the authority having jurisdiction. Now, the method of reduced clearing time, we can have zone selective interlocking, and that's where we set a downstream breaker that this breaker will open up if you pull too much current or you have a ground fault or short circuit is basically the general rule. And differential relaying is, like we said earlier, that's usually an upstream breaker communicating with a breaker downstream to allow certain current values to be used to clear short circuit, ground faults. And this is the one we talked about that has the two paths. One path, we get that current within the limitations of the arcing current, not the instantaneous that's up above that, so to speak. Energy reducing maintenance switching with local status indicator, and that's where you switch out the instantaneous trip and you switch in that path for the arc flash. When I say arc flash, the arcing current. Energy reducing arc flash mitigation system, then sometimes those systems are preset, so that anywhere you work, if a short circuit should occur in some way or an arcing current occur, it will automatically go into that second path. Now, instantaneous trip that is less than the available arcing current, then we're saying that the instantaneous trip would be less than the arcing current in this case. And notice this is a temporary adjustment and not intended to be used by this new rule. Instantaneous override that is less than the available arcing current. And so what we're doing, we're overriding the instantaneous value and we're picking up that 38% that we talked about of the arcing current of a 480 volt system. And of course, you know, that depends on conditions. And the approved equipment or equivalent means here, meaning if something else comes along, then we could put it in this approved here. Now remember, we reviewed approved, and that's up to the authority having jurisdiction, is defined in Article 100 there. So, and then we're to review and see 240.87b as well as the informational notes 1 through 4, and then we get a real good feel for what's taking place here. Now I'm going to kind of wrap this up, and we'll take a look at the purpose of change. And this purpose of change is a revision. And this revision has been made to clarify the documentation shall be provided to demonstrate that the method chosen to reduce the clearing time is set to operate at a value now below the available arcing current. In other words, we're going to open it up quick. This revision clarifies that it is the final setting of the instantaneous trip that determines whether or not an additional arc reduction technique or techniques are required. It is not intended that the maximum setting of the instantaneous trip, as is typically shipped from the factory, be the determined factor whether or not additional arc reduction is necessary, but rather the final setting is determined by the electrical system requirements, such as inrush characteristics or selective coordination, nor is it intended that the instantaneous trip be adjusted to a lower value while a worker is working on the equipment and then adjust back to the desired setting. Now, this was being done. They would take an instantaneous and put it in the low setting and say, well, now this is providing protection to the electrical worker in accordance with NFPA 70E. And what this is saying, that wasn't the intent. So the purpose of change in this 240.87 A and B was to correct this type of thinking by electricians and maintenance electricians that are maintaining these systems or installing these systems.